guys for your time. I appreciate it. I'm very excited about this. We'll just go ahead and start. The theme of this panel is where were you on 9/11? Okay, I'm gonna start us off. What was the world like before 9/11?
You're the big guy.
I'm the big guy. Before 9/11 to me, it felt safer. I'm not saying that it was safer, but it was also, to me, a little bit easier to live in, especially when you were traveling anywhere. You could go to the airport and get through security really easy, you know, and now you go to the airport and it could be 2-hour wait just to get through the line to the airplane. So to me, it was just a sense of security was higher then than it is now.
You took a lot of your freedoms for granted. You, like I said, everything was easier. There were terrorist attacks or whatever, but that was away from here. That wasn't here. So you read about it in the news and you heard or saw it on the news, but you didn't ever consider it to be at home or to you.
We, like Coach Kyle said, it all happened overseas. It all happened in different places. We were America. We were the biggest, toughest bully on the block, and things like that didn't happen to us. You know, it happened elsewhere, and we got to read about it or see it on the TV. But you know, you weren't personally affected by it because it was so far away.
Same.
That's gonna be a great.
Right,
day.
no, I know, I was like,
Same.
because I'm thinking about it, and I honestly don't necessarily remember. I don't wanna say that in a bad way, but I almost can't remember what it was like before 9/11.
How old were you?
I was in high school, so I was in the 11th grade.
Sorry, guys.
The 10th or 11th grade, I can't remember, but it was 10th grade. I was in 10th grade, so I don't remember what it was like before 9/11.
I was in 5th grade, so, but I think that I have such a strong sense now of like, how did we ever like let people get away with that kind of thing before 9/11? When my family's from Canada, so we would just drive up to Canada a lot, and we didn't need a passport to get into Canada. We were just like, oh hey, like we're going into Canada for 4 days, like see you in 4 days, and they like nothing. That was it. And like looking back on that, it's so interesting to me. Like how did we do that? They didn't check our passports. They didn't look at the car. Like there was no security. It was very trusting, and like Canada and the United States are pretty close, you know, in a lot of ways, but still it's still interesting to me, like that kind of thing, how we just did a lot of things that now we think so much about and take so much process to like make sure that we're secure.
I'd never even heard of Al-Qaeda or ISIS or never even given considerations. I didn't know what a terrorist group, a name for any terrorist group. I'd never heard of any names, and it stuck with me, which.
Fantastic. All right, Kiviante.
Why did terrorists hate us?
Ms. Deal, you jump in here.
If you could explain that answer, you'd be worth $1 million.
Yeah.
We really don't know. I assume it's because they see us as a greedy, capitalistic society, but I think it's more deep-rooted than that. Ben?
I also feel that they felt that we were trying to be the police of the world, that we were interfering in other areas in the Mideast, that we had taken sides with countries that they did not like us going into, for example, us declaring war, Desert Storm against Iraq and against Saddam Hussein. I don't think they liked America thinking that we can come over to their land and fight for what we feel is right. So the people that felt we were wrong, we were the big evil, basically, decided, how can we get back in America? They're not able to just take us on in a straight war. So the best thing they can do is terrorist acts, which are a lot smaller but just as devastating.
And there's a lot of resentment for America's support and protection of Israel in a largely in a region where you have to go back to, is it World War II? Is that when?
Keep going.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
So long, it's deeply seated.
Yeah. lot of resentment there.
But the Gaza Strip goes back thousands of years for just the land, territory, and who owns it and who has the right to it.
And religious, you know, back to, you know, it's all religious in base, and people that are different, they're afraid of people that are different, and they resent people that are different until you get to know them. And I think that there's two different cultures that had no common ground for a long time.
There were also a lot of like sketchy economic reasons that we were over there, and that's not good. We went over there and we supported people and then removed our support from people like Saddam Hussein. We put Saddam Hussein into power and then decided that that was a bad idea, and then so decided to take him out of power. And for us to be doing such important dealings with their political systems, and for us to be having such an important impact on the way that they govern their countries, I think for a lot of people over there felt like it was unfair and too much and an overreach of our power. Like we were just kind of messing with their governments in a way that was not our business. So I think that partly has to do with that as well.
What was your reaction when you found out about 9/11?
I remember driving in my car listening to a radio spokesperson, and the first plane hit, and we just thought maybe it was a fluke crash. So I called my husband and I said, turn on the news and see what's going on. And he was the one that called me back and said, look, something really big is going on. And my reaction was, holy God, our world is going to change right now, as we know it. I mean, there was fear, and before that, it was a lot more peaceful. And after that, everything changed. Everything, the way you saw things, you saw people, just boarding an airplane was different. But my reaction was, how unfortunate.
For me, I had a friend that actually worked in the Twin Towers. And so for me, it was fear. Is he alive? You know, did he get out? Was he even at work that day? And you didn't know right away. I mean, one thing that happened was the phone systems in New York pretty much locked up and shut down because everybody's calling and everybody's trying to get through, and you couldn't get through to anybody. So if you had a loved one up there, you had no idea if they survived or not. And some people didn't know for 48 hours whether or not their father, their daughter, their son was alive. And so my first reaction was fear on that end, and then it escalated to, it wasn't just the World Towers. I mean, they had other targets, and I also felt pride. I mean, when you see the plane that was aiming, was it for the Pentagon? No, one hit the Pentagon, but the other was going toward
The White House.
the Capitol, White House area. And the passengers on the plane were like, we're not gonna let this happen. They realized what was going on. They knew they were gonna die, but instead of letting them reach their target, they stormed the cockpit and ended up crashing the plane to save what could have been even a bigger tragedy. So I also felt pride in that we didn't just let it happen. When we found out about it, we fought back.
I was teaching at Warren County High School, and when it happened, everybody said, hey, the plane crashed into one of the Twin Towers, and we turned on the TVs, and then we started watching, and I saw the second one happen live, and it was amazing and just so surreal. You just jaw-dropping, heart down to your stomach, feeling just the horror, and then just to watch it all collapse. I couldn't describe it. You just think of all the people that were there. My brother was actually an airline pilot who flew a regular route around by the Twin Towers over New York City. So it's kind of, and so you wondered how he was, but we found out right away that he was okay and he wasn't. But that was a major concern right off the bat too, as well.
Wow. I was teaching at Jerry Baxter Alternative over in Nashville, and kind of the same thing as Ms. Deal said. When we were a very small school, and there wasn't a lot of money there, and we had one TV, and it happened to be in my classroom that day. And a teacher came in and said, "You might want to turn the news on. A plane just hit the World Trade Center." And I thought the same thing. I thought it was like maybe bad weather and a little Cessna or Piper, a little small airplane had just in the fog had run into it. Plane had hit the Empire State Building in fog So I didn't think it was anything, you know, you didn't think it was a terrorist attack, and so I turned the TV on and when you saw what was happening. So that school had maybe 100 kids in it at that time, and so everybody kind of piled into my room to watch it, and it was that terror that this is the start of World War III, and wondering what's going to happen to the world, but looking out and seeing faces that were as old as you, and realizing that your entire world, if this was the beginning of World War III, you know, your entire world is about to change, and that a lot of you could quite possibly be going to war, and that was heartbreaking to see, to fear that the world was going to change so much that your lives were going to be horribly altered and perhaps lost. That, you know, having all the kids in one room and being able to kind of protect them a little bit, you know, to keep them in a secure place and to let them know that they were at least safe for the time being was an important thing to feel that day for me.
My reaction was disbelief, because, yeah, I was in 10th grade, didn't process it probably as well as I could have if I was an adult. We went to our home rooms, and we watched the second plane hit, and we watched the buildings fall, and I think that's when it hit a lot of us, like, oh, that's actually happening. But as a 10th grader, I definitely probably just did not process it as well as I do now, even just thinking more about it now, what had happened. Mostly disbelief at that age.
I mean, I was in 5th grade, so I had no concept of the weight of the situation at all. Like, because I didn't know that this was so unusual, and I didn't know that this was so, I mean, I knew that it was horrible, of course, but I didn't really understand fully how horrible it was. And I remember the thing that scared me the most was my mom works in a hospital. I'm from Connecticut, which is about 2 hours. I live about 2 hours from New York City. And I knew that a lot of people were volunteering from the area to go and help. And I was so scared that my mother was going to go and help and that she would leave me and get hurt or be in a situation that she was unsafe. So that was my fear as a 5th grader.
Yeah, sorry I was late, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I remember I was driving to Vol State. That was my second year there. I was about to leave there and go to Austin Peay, and just confusion. I remember that was my first thought. Nobody knew what was going on. And I was listening to the radio on the way to school, and just nobody knew what was going on. By the time I got there, the second plane had hit, and then then we realized what was going on. And like a lot of people, my dad lives in Connecticut. He had just moved up there. It was his first year there, and he was a delivery driver into Boston and to New York. So we were trying to figure out whether he was okay, whether he had left in first thing in the morning or not. And I remember being just really sad that what was going on, a lot of fear about what was going to come. And I think that was it. This had to change things, in our world. And I think the other thing was just the amount of coverage that there was. That was kind of unprecedented. How many different angles you could see things from, and just how many people had cameras on what was going on was pretty amazing to see.
Because you all have to, like, the tallest building in Nashville is tiny compared to how big and massive those two buildings were. I mean, they were enormous, and the magnitude of what the collapse and how much damage it did, we can't even picture what it was in Nashville. Like, we don't have anything that's that size. These were huge buildings with thousands of people inside of them.
It was also the first time we saw it firsthand. I mean, with the news coverage, they had people on, 10 years before that, there was not a video on a cell phone. And now they've got videos on cell phones where people were actually able to record it and see it. And you would see when the building collapsed, the dust that was just pushing down the street of ash and dust. And it was like a giant cloud going down the streets. You would see people running. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that firsthand and realized that's in the United States. So I think the media really also changed in as well, because it was about not a newscaster, it was just the average person that was actually covering the news and was living through it.
It was like a horror movie.
What were your thoughts when they hit the first tower?
We didn't even know about it. I remember, I was in Spanish class when it happened, and when somebody said, oh, a plane hit, they said a plane crashed in New York. We didn't know that it actually hit a tower. And so my Spanish teacher pulled up a news, and of course it was in Spanish, so here we are trying to read it in Spanish. And there was a picture of it, of like the plane, it hadn't hit the tower, but there was a picture of a plane headed towards it. So I think when we first heard it, we're like, what, a plane is like hit a building? We didn't know anything of it until the second one came along.
Just thought it was an accident.
Or it was just a horrible accident, just like.
Yeah, I think it was just all the confusion, because nobody knew what was going on, and everybody, that was what everybody was trying to figure out. What was going on? Was it an accident? Was it an act of terrorism? Was it some kind of, just horrible accident? I think people assumed it was an accident until the second plane flew up.
Especially because, like Kyle was saying, that we didn't think in terms of terrorist attacks. Like, I was in Boston for the marathon bombing, and like immediately that's everyone's reaction of a bomb went off, something is going on with terrorism. Like we think like that now, but we didn't think like that at that point. I mean, I didn't think like that at that point. But like people didn't think in terms of terrorism at that point. So I don't think that most people's reactions was, who did this to us? It had to have been an accident.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that, because there was a bombing in the Trade Center in 1993, I
Right.
believe.
Right.
So when the plane hit, I think a lot of people who were aware of that, but you were too young.
Yeah.
So, but the bottom line is, I think at that point they were going, are we reliving something on a bigger scale? And then people were, I think 50-50, because those buildings are so tall that they sit there and think, well, a plane could crash into it by accident. But I think that most people, most New Yorkers were 50-50.
I mean, I wasn't, but even though I knew of the trade bomb before and the Oklahoma City bombing, they were done by bombs out of cars. They were made out of fertilizer, different things. Never have I thought of somebody would actually take over a plane and crash it. So for me, I thought it was an accident.
So extreme.
Especially when we thought it was an airline pilot. You thought it might have been something, but an airline plane or whatever.
Passenger plane.
Passenger plane, it had to be a malfunction in my mind. It was like something just horribly went wrong with the plane, is what I thought.
Yeah, okay. What were your first thoughts after the second plane hit?
World War III. That's what I thought it was gonna be, World War III. And that picture right there, I'm sure Mr. Kellogg showed you the video already. It always reminded me of like a shark attack, because you see that plane coming in and the expanse, the blue sky behind it, like you can't really get a feel for how fast that plane was moving, and then it just disappears inside that building, and that was, it was disbelief for me. Like, is this really happening? Because it did. It looked like something out of an Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis film, Die Hard, Terminator with a Vengeance. It didn't seem real, that this was happening, and it was disbelief.
What did you think when you realized that it was actually a terrorist attack?
I think America, there became this sense of like unbridled patriotism. Everybody banded together. America, you've never seen more flags on cars, and everybody came together. So there was this us against the world kind of mentality that then occurred after that. But that was in the hours and days and months and years following that. first realized it was a terrorist attack, it was anger. Why would somebody do this to us, and let's get them? And that's that's the whole country got swept up in that. It was, yep, we're gonna go into Iraq, and we're gonna find these weapons of mass destruction, and we're coming after you.
I think there was so much confusion that you almost didn't know how to process your thoughts. So when you were watching the news and you were watching how it unfolded, and they had videotapes of people taking, pictures and videos from their home camera, and one guy just spoke up, and his voice was really strong, and he said, "This is war." And right, just the way he said it, someone could say it 100 times, but just his voice and the way he said it was the first time I realized this might be war. This is an act of, hostility. So, or whatever. But it took for that guy to say, "This is war," for me to realize the impact of it all. So.
Yeah, I think when now that I think of it as almost like if you think of a fight, you think of the person that kind of gets sucker punched, right? And he's dazed and confused, and then when he comes back, he's ready for a fight, and that's how it seemed like we were. It seemed like I just remember being fearful, of what was coming next, what was next, because if this is the start, then it's already here, and where does it go from there?
Yeah.
It was already to a 10, and so what was past that, and then I along with tons of people, all my friends were swept up in this idea of like, just let's go back to back and go get whatever this is, no matter what.
Yeah, my wife and I got into a huge fight that night because I was afraid to go to sleep. Like, I'm not like afraid of the boogeyman coming out of the closet, but like I didn't want to, I didn't want to go to sleep and then wake up the next morning and turn on the TV and be like, oh, Nashville's gone now, and Boston's gone.
World War III is breaking out.
Yeah, I wanted to stay awake, and if I had to
Be ready
grab a
for
baseball
it.
bat and be standing on my front porch because someone was coming down the street because World War III was starting, I wanted to be ready. My wife was like, go to bed. I'm like, no. And we ended up getting this huge argument about it. We fought for like 2 weeks over this. We were dating at the time. We broke up for a while because of this fight. Like, I was so affected by this, and she was like, there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm like, we gotta do something. That they caught us sleeping. How easy is it to, how many of you have been on a flight before? You been on a plane?
Nope, my mom doesn't do planes.
Mom's a smart
Planes
lady.
are boats.
Yeah, but
They sink and they do exactly what happened to 9/11.
And then when you get on a plane and you realize you are in this tube and you are flying 30,000 feet up in the air, and there's nothing you can do but to think that somebody that they got through with, and we start hearing these reports of box cutters. Like, they didn't even have guns. They just had tiny little X-Acto knives.
Just getting on the plane, period, realizing that something could go wrong and anything is possible, and you just realize what happens, and you just have that expense, that feeling that what could happen, anything could happen. My grandfather always said, expect the unexpected.
Yeah, and now you get on a plane, and it's subsided a little bit, but for years after that, you get on a plane and you start looking at who's sitting around you. Is there anybody I should be cautious about? And am I close to an exit here? And okay, if that guy gets up and makes a move for the front, for the cabin, what am I gonna do? Because in my head, I'm Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. I'm gonna, I probably would have just sat there and peed on myself. Like, oh God, we're all gonna die.
You get nervous when you see those people from other countries after going through 9/11.
Which is a terrible thing to,
Right.
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you start stereotyping every single person you see.
Yeah.
And you've got exit plans and strategies, and you don't want to do that. You want to get on a plane and watch the in-flight movie and enjoy your peanuts.
That's
And
one of the
enjoy
really,
the view.
that's one of the really lasting effects, is this paranoia, this sense of like, we know one of the worst case scenarios. And so now we are in this paranoid state of like, what can I possibly do to make this not happen? And so we go to these things that are really unfair and awful, like stereotyping, and we go to these defense mechanisms that are not necessarily helpful, but we as little people compared to a big plane and a big organization are so powerless. And so it created that sense of like powerlessness and paranoia of that sticks with us. Like people, I imagine going on planes before, like people get nervous that it's gonna crash, but the sense of what could happen is so much worse now, I imagine.
Beyonce.
Did he get up and go to the front of the plane, or
There were multiple people on each plane.
There's 4 or 5 people
Yeah.
rushed the plane, or the cockpit.
Yeah.
On Flight 93, there was the one that was heading towards Washington DC, a number of people got up and decided that they were going to try to get into the cockpit because the terrorist had locked the door. And these very brave souls said, come on, let's fight this guy. So that there was a number of people that decided to get up and fight the terrorists that had taken over the plane, but unfortunately they weren't successful. But
Well, they were successful in crashing the plane.
yes.
It didn't go into.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That is true. I never thought of it that way. Unfortunately, their lives weren't spared,
They
but
knew they
many
were gonna
others.
die. Where we read it when they had the cell phone, it's like, this is the last I'm gonna talk to you. When we talked about that.
Yeah.
And there've been plane hijackings before, right? This wasn't the first time it had happened, but
Things
nobody
like that
had
are
ever.
normal.
Nobody had ever flown a plane into a building. They'd landed the plane and then made demands. We want millions of dollars. We want these political prisoners freed. And then the SWAT team and the the military gets there and they surround the plane, and it never ends well for the hijackers. But nobody had taken it to this level of insanity that, so the people on the plane, I'm assuming, when the hijackers got up there and they had their little knives and they, I think they cut, or at least there were reports that they cut some of the stewardesses, but they were holding them hostage. So everybody just thought, yeah, we're gonna agree with what they wanna do, and then they'll land the plane and they'll make the demands and we can get off safely. Nobody thought we're gonna fly into a building and this is gonna be it. Nobody thought we have just become a gigantic missile.
My understanding was the plane that went down, when they fought back, they did realize what had happened
Yeah.
previously.
Right.
I don't know if they made a phone call, that last phone call, and somebody said, hey, 2 planes just crashed into the World Trade Tower, they're
That's
making a
exactly what
phone
happened.
call, and they're like, oh, we're hijacked, they're gonna do the same thing. So, I mean, I think just because, as Lane said, they heard, Mr. Hammond, sorry, as Mr. Hammond
You call me
said,
Lane.
they realized where they were going, and at that point, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't have had an option but to fight back.
Cause you've got 2 options that you may have studied this in the science class. There's fight and there's flight. And that's fight for something or run away from it. Well, you're 30,000 feet up in the air trapped in an airplane. There's no running away. And if you know what's happening, your only option is fight back. And that's what they were able to do.
If you
on that.
go down, trying.
Yeah.
Isn't that a poem?
What did you think when before the plane crashed into the field, or did you think it was?
The questions are gonna be behind you guys too.
Right.
I remember when I thought it crashed, I actually first thought something went wrong. They missed their target. Actually, my first thought was the U.S. Army shot the plane down. I'll be honest, they realized that plane was not responsive. It was heading to Washington D.C. The action would be, is it Andrews Base that's the closest to Washington? They probably took down the plane on their own, the U.S. did. Did I ever think it would end? To me, I remember I was teaching at Antioch High School, and I was supposed to go home and paint a nursery for one of my kids we were expecting at home. And I was gonna stop and buy paint at Home Depot. And I remember going to Home Depot and there was nobody in the whole store. It was like the whole world stopped and kinda went on pause.
They
And
happened for days.
everybody, our principal said, don't turn on the TVs, don't watch. Every teacher turned the TV on and
Yes.
watched. I mean, we did. It's like,
Of course.
we're living history. We wanted to know, we felt the kids had a right to know. Every TV was on even though we were told not to, but the world stopped. I didn't know how it was gonna end. I really thought we're gonna go to war, but I also was like, we don't even know who we're fighting. I mean, nobody jumped up that I remember really quick taking responsibility. A lot of people kinda did, but it took us a while to realize who is our enemy in this. And to me, that was one of the scariest things is we've been attacked we don't even know who we've been attacked by. And how do you fight that invisible enemy? And that's what it was. It was an invisible enemy that we didn't know how to deal with.
Who would wanna do this to us? Why would they wanna do this to us? That was, you know, we didn't have a clue, I mean, at the time.
Some people say that it was kind of predicted when they had that bombing in the Pentagon, and that it was actually going to happen sooner or later, that they were going to start up again.
Possibly. There was, I remember CNN, I think it was CNN, was showing a loop while they, when they cut away from the buildings, they were showing this lady in Afghanistan or Iraq, or I don't even remember where she was, and she was dancing around holding like a burning American flag, and they just kept showing the same thing over and over. So they were putting a face to who we were fighting, and we still didn't even know who it was. And we didn't even know what this film clip was from. This lady, it may not have had anything to do with 9/11, right? This may have been years old of this video footage of this lady dancing around with a burning American flag, but immediately we were able to say, it's coming from the Middle East, it's their fault, and it helped hurt relations between, like I said, you started looking around, and anybody that looked different than an American, you kind of looked at them out of the corner of your eye to make sure they weren't doing something that, you needed to jump up. And the guy on the flight that crashed, Todd Beamer, who, when he called his wife and said, this is the last time I'm gonna talk to you, I love you. And then as he was putting the phone down, he said, let's roll, right? And that became like this battle cry for America, let's roll. Like, we're not gonna take this. I just even saying let's roll just kind of gave me chills a little
Just
bit.
him, yeah, I did too. Just when he was talking about how there was so much stereotyping and everything, and this is maybe a little bit off topic, but it's amazing to me. That's why I take so much pride here teaching at Glencliff, because of how diverse we are, and people that don't know us or about Glencliff and everything. I take pride in how many people from different countries and different languages, and how I think we get along so well. And I take pride in that a great deal, because we are so different, yet we're all the same. And, that we're doing, because people that I talk to, they don't understand, and they're like, how is that? And they're, I love it. I love the fact that everybody's different, and I love the fact that everybody's still the same. That we enjoy each other's the diversity and the differences, but that we're still people who care about people.
Honestly, it changed the way I looked at the world. I didn't know much about the Middle East, but because of that, I started learning about what was happening to the Kurds. That Kurdistan was broken into 5 different countries, and based if you're in Turkey or Iran or Iraq, whether you had freedom or not. And I got to hear personal stories. Honestly, talking to Mr. Yassine about what he went through and what his family went through and how they lived it over there, and why he fled Iraq to Turkey, and what his life was like before he got here. And I started realizing not everybody is like that. They want the same things I do. They want to go to bed safe at night. They want a place to raise their family. They want their kids to do better than they did in life. They have the same dreams and aspirations I do. And I'll be honest, I lumped everybody together at first. It was that fear, until I started realizing that they're individuals, and that there were extremists in that one group.
There's extremists in every group.
Yeah.
I think it became immediately an us and them situation, and because of the magnitude of the situation and of the attack, it's been really difficult for us to heal in that aspect of it, and to get past that us and them. And you see it still so much, that people just cannot let go of the idea that there's a them, and that they are brown, and that they are from the Middle East, and that's not right. And it's been something that's difficult to heal from, and that's something that we have done a really good job here of doing.
Okay, where do you think the 4th plane would have gone if it didn't crash?
I think it was headed to the White House or Capitol area.
When
did you think about the plane when it crashed in the field?
Do we already have this question?
Huh? It's similar.
Have we talked about this question yet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
It's same.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've talked about this too. Good. Ready to go? I need to talk for you. Okay. What were your plans after work or school that day?
as I said, I was gonna go home and paint a nursery. I did go buy the paint, but I didn't paint anything. I mean, it was like, you cannot take your eyes off the news. And, I mean, I don't know what time I went to bed. I love sleep, probably more than anybody. I go to bed, I like my 8 hours of sleep. I mean, I don't function well if I don't have it, but there are a few days in my life where I remember in detail most of my days. I don't think if I said, what happened to you on December 12th, 2012, you could tell me what happened in your life. But if you ask me what happened on 9/11, I can tell you what class I was teaching in, where I was standing, conversations I had and with who. I remember more detail about that day than honestly probably any day in my life, because that day impacted me more than any other day. You know, my wedding day and birth of my kids, honestly, are almost a blur, you know, to a degree. But that day was something I remember in detail. And honestly, I couldn't stop watching TV. I could not get enough. I wanted to know why, I wanted to know who. That's all I could think of.
I was supposed to have basketball workouts afterwards, and then I was gonna pick up my kids from daycare. Everything was canceled after school activities, rightfully so. And, I went and picked up my kids from the daycare and, spent my whole time with them. And then watching TV and just spending it with them in the house.
I was probably gonna come home and grade papers, and I, left school, raced home, and it was a beautiful day that day. It was a gorgeous day. I mean, New York itself, you can see blue skies, and Nashville was the exact same way. I raced home, and my roommate was lying out in the backyard, suntanning, listening to music, and I walked in, I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I can't watch anymore. Like, I can't watch anymore. Nothing new has happened since 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and this is 4 in the afternoon. He's like, it's the same thing over and over. I can't watch it anymore. And I was like, well, I am. And so I went in and just parked on the sofa, and I didn't move until like midnight when I got in a fight with my wife, so.
It was also a time to reflect inside and think about how your life might change, but one thing that was really eerie is how quiet it was. You were almost alone with your thoughts if the TV wasn't on, or when you went to bed. There was no planes because they had grounded them, so it was really quiet. I mean, eerily quiet.
But when you did, because there were still military planes, and when they'd go overhead, you'd be like,
Yeah, yeah.
what's happening?
Yeah.
Snap your head up.
But I mean,
Be like, oh, crap.
nobody went out. I mean, nobody was like, oh, we're being attacked, let's go have a party. I mean, it's like everybody just retreated to their house and was glued to the television. So if you did go anywhere, like I went to Lowe's and literally, I think I was the only person shopping. I mean, the parking lot was empty. I thought they were closed. It was just an eerie feeling.
Did people take kids out of school down here?
Yeah.
Did kids go home? Cause I remember like, by the end of the day, half of my school was gone, like half of the kids were gone, cause we were so close that like, if a nuclear bomb went off in New York City, like my house would be gone, my parents' house would be just gone. So people were taking them out, and like, so that was really weird, like, that's how I knew as a 5th grader that like, something was going on, like something was really serious, because everybody went home, nobody went to school the rest of the week.
Did you all watch it in 5th grade? Did you watch it?
We didn't watch it. I know the room next to us was watching, and the teacher was like updating us.
Right.
Cause I remember the teacher coming in saying a second plane hit the other tower.
I know we had a teacher in college that told us that actually Tennessee had 2 very vital spots if we ever were attacked as a country, and I was like, Tennessee, really? I mean, what do we have to offer? But we talked about that. There was a Tennessee history class, and it was Oak Ridge, which is of course an atomic bomb founding area, but also Nashville, because of our interstate system. That if you go north and south, Nashville's where you go through. I mean, we are one of the biggest transportation areas with 3 interstates coming together, and we really feed from north of here to south of here. You almost had to go through Nashville to get anywhere. and that our bridges and overpasses would actually be a target at some point. And so that kind of threw another loop into me is, what could happen here, you know, what are their other plans? I mean, I thought maybe it wasn't just planes, it could be a lot more.
And that's the thing, is we all started thinking that way, of like, okay, I'm close to which cities, why would I be a target? What is my risk here? What could, if there was a war, what would happen in my area and where I'm at? And that, like I said before, that paranoia and that strategic thinking that just kind of plagued us for so long.
I do remember going to the grocery, the next day, and it was like a snow day, where everybody was buying, you couldn't find a bottled water on the shelf. I mean, honestly, everybody was like stocking up. If this is a war, I gotta make sure I have supplies, so it was like the grocery stores were sold out. That was definitely a weird experience.
Yeah.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was in Ball State in college, and I remember thinking, awesome classes are canceled. You know, I feel bad now that I thought that, but we didn't know what was going on. I knew there was something. I was like, cool, classes are canceled. And then they said classes weren't canceled, and I was a little tore up. But then when the second plane hit, I was like, I'm going home. You know, I had a wife by then. We just went home, you know, to be with them and be with our family. But yeah, I remember how just it didn't feel real. It was very surreal, almost like in a dream. Driving home, listening to the radio, still haven't seen it. I hadn't seen it, and so when I got home to see it was just, you know, because I knew what was going on, but I couldn't imagine it. You know, again, the way it seemed was just, you know, just incredible. And kind of how it affected my wife working for the state. You know, and things were just closing down. You know, and they said don't come into work. You know, so things were just closed.
For me, well, I was in elementary school when it happened. And so I have more like snapshot images of that day than anything else. So I can remember like finding out about it, like, oh, a plane crashed in New York was what we were told, but we weren't given any details really. And I was just kind of like, okay, like a plane crashed, why is everyone freaking out? Because teachers were crying, parents did start, like I was in Ohio, and parents did start pulling their kids out of school to take them home. My mom was a teacher, and so she was at a different school dealing with all of that. But I do remember coming home that night, and we had the TV on mute. And as the sun was going down, like the TV, like the glare was coming in on the TV, so kind of like the fall, I don't know, you know, as the sun goes down in the fall, you have that kind of orangish color. And that was glaring on the TV. And my sisters and my parents and I sat around the table for dinner with the TV in the background, on mute. And we had, like, we're holding hands to say our prayer. And I don't remember what was said, but the whole entire time my eyes were open and I was just watching it, and they just kept replaying it and kept replaying it and kept replaying it as the planes just crashed into the towers. And then, like, the rest of the night there was just nothing really said. Anytime a question was asked, nobody had an answer. Just the whole entire house, I think, for the first time was silent. Everyone just kind of sitting there being together, but awfully aware of what had happened.
What was school like the next day?
That's a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
Did anybody even go to school the next day though?
Yeah.
After all of that, I wouldn't have. I'd be around my family.
I was at Hume Fogg, so our school was downtown. Well, it is downtown. And I remember a couple of days later, we were on lockdown. Well, we went on lockdown when the planes hit, and we went on lockdown a couple days later because there was a bomb threat at the Capitol building a couple streets down. So that was fun because we were in history class, and I did not have a cell phone at the time, so I was not 16 yet. And so, you know, trying to call home about that, because I want to say we were actually there later than when we were supposed to leave school. I think it actually went beyond regular school hours. So I don't remember the day after, but I do remember that did happen a couple of days after, and we had our regular school day, but other than being locked down until maybe 3 o'clock.
I was a biology teacher, and I can tell you the next day we didn't talk about biology. I mean, you needed to when you go through something traumatic, some of the best things you can do is talk about it. And so it's something I think pretty much every teacher probably spent a lot of time just talking to kids and, still try. I remember planning period, turning the news back on.
Right.
But, pretty much it was just a long therapy session, it seemed like, just letting kids talk their feelings out, talk about their fears and so forth.
Finding out about
No, go right ahead.
finding out about that now, it kind of makes me think I want to be there to see it and believe it, but I also don't want to be there to be one of those people that might not make it, because it's so hard to believe.
There's, I know you've talked about it in Mr. Keller's class, that every generation has had these kind of defining moments that stick with them. The World War II, besides World War II, there was Pearl Harbor. And, information traveled much more slowly at that time. Then you had Kennedy's assassination back in the 60s. And then, for me, I had thought, and this is probably pretty close, I don't think you guys were even born yet.
Yeah.
When
I'm feeling
the
old.
Challenger blew up.
Oh, I was in ninth grade biology class.
Yeah, I was in there.
I was in third grade.
Really?
JFK?
Really? You had to yell that out?
Junior? Lord. But that was it. So unfortunately, the odds suggest that something is going to be this defining moment in your life, where something horrible that is going to stick with you. We don't remember all the wonderful things that have happened throughout our lives as graphically and vividly and detail oriented as the big, huge, kind of terrifying ones. One of the memories that sticks with me on the day it happened, like I said, we had all these kids piled up in my classroom, and one of the kids had his head down the entire time. And a lot of them were like, "Hey, we're not doing anything today. We get to take a nap." Like the severity, the gravity of the situation didn't affect him at all. And after that first building came down, I remember Tom Brokaw, the newscaster, saying, like, hundreds of police officers and firefighters just ran into that building right before it came down. And this kid woke up and went, "Yeah!" And I wanted to kill him. Like, I could not believe that was his reaction. And then after talking to him a little bit later on, his perception of the police from where he had grown up was a very different perception of the police than I had. For him, the pigs got it. And it was a very, very, like, he didn't understand what had just happened. For him, it was just that a bunch of cops had just been killed. And that, to me, was a huge slap in the face that even though we're in the same building together and we're Americans, we have a very, very, we're very, very different at this point. The way we've grown up is very, very different. It didn't affect him at all. He was the only person I saw that was happy on 9/11. And I think as he grew up and started to understand it over the next few days, hopefully it's changed a little bit, but like that is always going to be a memory that I have of this kid applauding when the buildings came down.
Where was your family when 9/11 happened?
My dad was here. He taught here for 17 years. And he was actually teaching in what's now Mr. Tobbs' room.
Penthouse?
Yeah.
It's very specific.
My wife was at work, my kids were in daycare, in McMinnville. Well, actually, no, she was actually, working in Nashville at the time, so.
Alabama, California, and Washington, D.C., but they were outside of all of that, so we knew they were fine. They were old.
I do remember though, my parents,
They were fine. They were old.
my parents were divorced. I mean, my whole family teaches, my brother, my wife, my brother's wife, my mom and dad. So we're all teachers, and I do remember that evening, everybody's calling, even though we're not near New York, everybody just wanted to call and hear your voice and make sure you were okay.
How will you feel if it affected your outside?
To be honest, I kind of felt it did. I mean, even though New York's not my town, it's still, to me, the United States. And to me, it kind of felt the same.
the fear wasn't as deeply as if you were in one of those cities. I mean, I wasn't afraid, but the emotions of that they hurt us, that was us, was as strong as it could be. It didn't matter where it was.
I think there was, no matter where you were, there was somebody around you who knew somebody that was there. Who had some type of connection, like, oh, the person in my class, maybe their uncle was in the building. You know, maybe a family friend, something. There was, no matter where you were, there was some type of connection back to New York. And so, I think what y'all said is right, that no matter where you were, it felt like it was your town, because it just hit everyone.
It's a different, I don't know how people in other businesses would feel, but I think for all of us, like, you know, our concern, if it happened in our hometown, if it happened today in Nashville, you know, there'd be the immediate concern about your own family. Like, I'd be panicked that my daughter would be okay. But then the next thing would be, are you guys okay? Because whether you realize it or not, you know, sometimes we have to get on to you, but every day you walk in this building and every day you walk out, you're our kids, and we care about you. And I'm saying this after being here for a month. You know, the kids we teach are our families, and so there'd be a lot of concern about you, and, you know, are you okay?
And honestly, it scares me to a degree, because I would not be able to be there for my own kids. You know, as principal, I don't get to leave this school until everybody leaves in an event like that. So my 3 daughters don't have a dad going home because I'm here with my other kids. And part of that kind of weighs on me, you know, that I wouldn't be there for my own children, but I'd be here for you all till you got home. But that's a challenge.
Do you ever think it'll happen again?
Yeah. In a different way. You can't prepare for crazy. You know, I mean, if you look at what the lingering, when you get on an airplane now, you take your shoes off. Because one guy tried to get on the plane with a shoe bomb. And so years later, we take our shoes off when we get on the plane. So you can't prepare for it. So something is going to happen again. Which is not to say you need to live your lives in fear, anticipating when that's gonna happen. It just is, and then you gotta make sure that you're there for each other to help.
It's crazy, you see all the people implementing all these new security procedures, mainly in the airports. I mean, I remember we would be visiting family in Texas, and my family would come running onto the plane to say goodbye to us before we went back to Ohio. Like, they were allowed past the gate back onto the plane just to say bye to us. But now that would never happen. You have all these security procedures, but you can only do so much. I mean, if people are determined enough, and we know there's the technology to do it one way or another, something's gonna happen.
I mean, honestly, right now, I don't let my kids go to a movie theater. After what happened in Hickory Hollow, in Louisiana, Colorado. I mean, I'm very leery about, and that's homegrown terrorism. That's people that are from here, but I'm afraid to let them go to a movie right now. So, I mean, it will happen. It's just when and what.
Hey, Jess, we're gonna do one more question.
How would life be if 9/11 would have never happened?
I'll be honest, I think you go to a Titans game and not stand in line getting search going through. I mean, security changed. I mean, our life changed. Going into any venue with a lot of people now, there's extra security. So life would definitely be different then. I think we live in a sense of more feeling safe more than we do.
I think there would be less, to some extent, not completely, but less prejudice, less fear of people who are different from us. Because, I mean, we go into airports now, and almost every single time, my mom is pulled aside for, like, to do, like,
you also have to be really careful, like everyone says now, be careful when you go to the Red Sea. We were going to the Red Sea and they said, hide your passport, don't let many people know you're American. So we locked up our passports and really just, put a little A at the end, saying we're Canadian, because you just aren't American, they're after Americans the way you think, and other people tell you that. So I think there's fear that has developed as a result of 9/11. But how would life be if 9/11 hadn't happened? I don't think we'd have those fears. I think there'd be a lot less fear,
But in a lot of ways, the world has changed. There's a lot more security. There's more fear. There was a whole thing in this talking about it afterwards that like comedy was dead. You couldn't make fun of this, and everybody was going to be gloomy for the rest of their lives. You know what? It hasn't. We've grown up with it. You have grown up in this world from the moment you were born, but my life itself is not noticeably different. On an everyday, I still get up, I brush my teeth, put my clothes on, I come to work. I still listen to music, and I still laugh, and I like movies, and I still read books. My life is not. It hasn't become this terrorist state where we're living in terror all the time. My life's not that different than it was on an everyday aspect. On a more global aspect, I think we're more aware of this world, and we're more conscientious of it. I think a lot of it's up to you guys to change this world now. We've done what we can. It's up to you.
All right, on that note, it's a good place to stop. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Good job, Christina. Really wonderful.
This is
Thank
great.
you.
Good question.
Good job, Brianna. Thank you. Very smart.
Mr. Kellogg, we have to move tables.
We'll do that. Yeah, we got everything. Thank you guys so much.
Almost time to go.